Welcome. You're watching the Bring Your Work Show coming to you every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, 11:30 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, Vegas time. If you like what you're hearing or like what you're watching, be sure and tune in uh, regularly and see what's happening. I'm excited to reconnect with y'all. It's been a little while. I've been on not quite vacation, but I've been kind of underground, getting a lot of stuff done. Really focused on building up this channel. So with the Bring Your Work Show, a lot of y'all are new, actually hitting some new milestones. There's literally hundreds of new people that have joined since the holidays. So thank y'all for coming through. Again, my name is Damon Brown. My main thing is helping you as a side hustler, solopreneur, or otherwise a non-traditional entrepreneur. I've been on that journey that you might have been on as well, as far as having little kids at home or having dependents and trying to get your startup or your creativity up to the next level. Maybe having some older parents, maybe having a day job and trying to juggle all those different things. What's exciting about today's show is that the vibe is a little bit different. Traditionally, Wednesdays are for live shows. Again, I've had a live show in a little while, so thanks for enjoying the reruns that I've had on deck over at the Bring Your Work show. But this one's different because I actually really wanted to open it up to y'all. And so I gave a call out to get some questions sent over. And if y'all have some questions about how to build a good freelance income, be sure and put them down in the comments. I got like three different monitors going on, so I'll be sure and catch your comments. Before we get into it, uh, we're focused on managing freelance money. Now, freelance money is complicated because it comes and it goes, it flows. If you saw the thumbnail, as they call it, over at YouTube, or the picture that was designed, shout out to the AI designers who did it. It's really about surfing the ups and downs with it. And sometimes you're going to have a bounty, and sometimes things are going to be a little bit dry. And also, you want to find ways, different types of income streams, including passive income, that will help even out those things. I've been a freelancer independent for, let's just say, a couple of decades, and slowly becoming more than that. And definitely ups and downs with it. I have an understanding partner. I got little kids that I'm taking care of as well. And so it's not just a matter of you creating your best life based on the art, or as a founder. I'm a founder twice over and sold my last startup. So I understand that life too. It's not just a matter of creating the best life for yourself, but also building the best life for the people around you. And a lot of stuff that I'm working on, that's the process that I'm going through, but it takes a little while. And so what I'm trying to do is distill the couple of decades of game that I have and hopefully some insights and pass them on to you. Now, there was a very popular episode that we recently did on mastering freelance income, mastering freelance money, a beginner's guide. And it broke down the three pillars, I believe, that you need to make a stable freelance income. The first one is knowing how to survive a drought. The second one is knowing how to deal with a windfall, which psychologically feels the same, but I'll explain that in a second. And third of all, being able to build multiple income streams, particularly passive income. I talk about passive income a lot because it helps even out those things and those ups and downs. All right, so that's what we're going to be talking about on the show today. Again, the lines are open, as they used to say back in the radio days. So the caller lines are open. Feel free to jump in the chat, whether you're on Amazon, shout out to you, over on LinkedIn, over on YouTube, which is where the main hub is. If you want to get this regularly, you can subscribe for free. And it's every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. This might be my 300th episode, which is crazy. This might be the 300th. So, shout out to all of us who have supported it. It's been about 2 years, and it's been a fantastic journey. And even though I'm a keynote speaker and I'm a business coach, I have my business over at damonbrown.net. If you want to check that out and you're interested in learning about my coaching, I have several books. And also, having a regular TV show is a different dimension for me. So I appreciate all the love and the support, particularly over the last few weeks. It's been fantastic with the amount of y'all that are coming through, literally getting hundreds of viewers at this point. And so, again, thank you. If you want to become part of the tribe, it's free. You can subscribe to Damon Brown's Bring Your Worst Show at the link below, or just go to youtube.com/Brown Damon and click the subscribe button over in the corner. It always mirrors things down here. Subscribe button's down there. So, but that gives a good signal to me as far as learning what y'all are into and if I'm going in the right direction. And lastly, if you want to learn more about me, I'm at damonbrown.net. All right. So today, managing freelance money. Ooh, it is a complicated subject, mostly because we aren't taught how to manage money in that particular way. At least I wasn't. I can't speak for anybody else. Luckily, shout out to my mom, shout out to my stepfather, shout out to my father, shout out to my uncle. There was a lot of folks around me who they didn't call it freelancers at the time, but they were independent. And so there's a lot of game that I got from them that made it a lot easier. And it's a certain psychological adjustments that I always make. And I don't take that for granted, but I used to. And for a lot of us, even for me, there are certain challenges that come with being independent. And when I talk about independent, I mean being an independent creator, like an artist, being an independent or freelance writer, which I've been for, again, umpteen years, or even doing startups. Again, I've done two and I bootstrap both of them. When you're not making money in traditional means, the challenge is that your money doesn't come in regularly. In other words, you will get a lump sum of money based on a big project. Now, I've learned to negotiate to get my money up front, which I have a couple books, at least one book in particular that I'd recommend to get more insight into that. But no matter what, it's a lump sum. So you can get all your money up front. Like I've done some recent projects recently. I got all my money up front, which is fantastic, right? So I can pay my taxes on it. Always want to pay your taxes. Pay your taxes on it. I can distribute it. I can build up things based on that. The challenge is that I will still be working on the project. And so I already got paid. And so whatever happens with the project, it goes a little bit longer, which, you always want to negotiate some cushion in there, but it goes a little bit longer, or you're just working on it for a while. You're not getting any more money from it, right? Or the reverse, which can be really tough, is that you are actually working on something and you haven't been paid, or you won't get paid until the project is done. And if you're not paid until the project is done, that means essentially you're working for free. And then if the project ends up hitting a snag, if they end up having financial issues, which has happened to me more than I'd like to talk about, or the project takes longer than expected, or if you end up dealing with what's called feature creep, which means that new ideas are coming in and it's not based on the original proposal, but just cool stuff that comes in. They're like, add this, add that. And you're like, nah, I can't do that. You have to try to limit that. In all those cases, you might not get compensated based on what you agreed on. So that's just one instance of all the different waves that you're going to have to navigate if you're going to get independent money. The positive side about it is that there's not as much of a cap. And so the folks that I know, and probably most of the folks that you know, get a paycheck every 2 weeks. That check is not going to change. That's also a double-edged sword. There's no way, unless they do a side hustle, there's no way for them to be able to increase that. And so if you're dealing with that, you need to be able to get into the right mindset and say, my money's going to go up and down. That's part of the game. And again, I've been doing it for a couple decades, done 4 TED Talks. I've had multiple best-selling books. I got a TV show, and still my money goes up and down. So there's no protection from that. But what you can do is help mitigate the waves and the jumps between up and down. And there's some tools that I think will be able to help y'all get that together. All right. So sorry, my screen went blank for a second. And so there are a couple questions that I get asked often, and I'm sure there's some questions that you guys will be throwing in too. So feel free to do so. Here's something that's asked quite a bit. How do I decide on a path? This falls into managing freelance money because one of the concerns that we often have is, how am I going to make a living at this particular path that I decided on, or what floats my boat, or what have you? I think one of the best ways that you can move forward as far as deciding on a path is figuring out what people keep asking you for. As I've said on previous shows, I became a coach when people kept on asking me to become a coach. That was my path to coaching. Before I became a coach about 6 years ago, before that period of time, coaching didn't cross my mind. But I like talking to people. Obviously, I have a TV show, but I like talking to people. I've been through enough adventures where I can both good and ill and all kinds of crazy, crazy stuff on my journey. I've taken enough risk so I can come back to the proverbial village and share those insights, ideally with you. And I'm fairly articulate. And so I can take those insights or those challenges that I've had, package them in a way so that you might be able to understand them better than someone who might not be as articulate or who doesn't want to share those insights. I guess that'll be the last thing. I really like sharing whatever knowledge I got. So because of that, that lends itself to coaching. But I didn't look at coaching. Instead, coaching found me. And the people that I met when I was doing my book tours and other things kept asking for coaching. I was confused, but I didn't realize, oh, they are actually telling me what my next step is going to be. So, one of the best ways you can learn your path or deciding your path is to find out what feedback you're getting from other people. Now, ideally, there's a kind of a Venn diagram of the stuff that you absolutely adore. Like the stuff I'm doing right now, I love it. You can probably tell my hands are waving all over the place. Like, I love what I'm doing right now, and I love what I'm doing for you. Ideally, it's the stuff that you love and it's overlapped with the stuff that the world needs. I'm fortunate, perhaps, or at least I'm grateful, I should say, that the work that I do connects at a period of time when we really do need more leadership. We really do need to listen to the people who have been shut out of the boardrooms. That's what non-traditional entrepreneur means to me. And so when I started this journey several years ago with my business books, starting with the Bite-sized Entrepreneur, it fit into the direction that the kind of the wave, as we say nowadays, the wave or the vibe, right? Thank you for the thumbs up. The wave or the vibe of where we were going. So you want to find that overlap. That's what makes your path. Now, sometimes it's going to be a little bit askew. And in my earlier years, I was doing work that was fine and it was work that paid the bills, but it wasn't quite of that level of servitude. And I mean that in the best way possible, that level of servitude that I wanted it to be. So it took a little while. And I was sharing with someone recently that the work that I do, it's about 85 to 95% there. Some of the work is well paying, and so it's almost there. Some of the work is low paying, but it is 120% there. What you have to do is kind of strike that balance, ideally. And sometimes you have to make those short term sacrifices for that. I know some of the work that I've done in the past, and even some of the work that's been more recent, it's stuff that I've had to do to make sure that things are taken care of. Obviously, I got a family. I gotta take care of myself. You know what I mean? Retirement's on the horizon, far horizon, but it's still coming up. And so there's certain thought processes that have to play into that. But if you're like 21 and you're a college student, the amount of responsibilities you have will probably be less than I would have. And so it all depends on where you are in that process. I think that's really the key to coming up with your particular path. And so today we're talking about managing freelance money. It's based on the recent episode of Bring Your Worth that was last Friday about a beginner's guide to managing freelance money. So we're talking about doing a Q&A on all things related to freelance money as a creator, freelance money as an independent artist, freelance money as a freelance writer, and freelance as far as being a bootstrapping entrepreneur. They all require making something out of nothing, and your traditional paychecks aren't going to be there. So I want to kind of do a deep dive since y'all seem to really I guess dig's the word, dig the recent episode. You can catch the recent episode that just ran a few days ago. You can catch it in the link below that I'm showing. And it's also all in the metadata and all those links that are below my talking head. I come to you every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Wednesdays are the live shows. 11:30 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, Vegas time. Try to give you everything that I can in regards to into entrepreneurship, into creating that independent money, and to keeping things stable as you balance all that good stuff. So another question that actually seems to come up a lot is how we deal with dry spells. So how do you deal with dry spells? One of the best things you can do with a dry spell is, well, there's a few things you can do. Number one thing is to massage your relationships. The caveat, as I talk about in the aforementioned episode about of the beginner's guide to freelance money, again, the links below. You want to have those relationships in a good place when you actually need that support, right? So you want to have those relationships in a good place when you need that support, not after the fact. So it's kind of like beginning things with an ask. Shout out to Sri Srivinen's son, who I've been on his show a few times. He's a awesome media guy. I learned that from him many, many years ago. In fact, if you want to catch the episodes where he's interviewed me, you can catch it in the Bring Your Worst show over at youtube.com/Brown Damon. And I would say he interviewed me last probably about a year and a half ago. But shout out to him. But I learned that from him many years ago, where he was talking about that. He was doing the seminar, and he said, never start a relationship with an ask. In other words, don't come in and say, hey, let me connect with you on LinkedIn. And you connect on LinkedIn. And it's like, can you go ahead and give me a book deal? Can you promote my product? Like, it needs to be some type of mutual connection and building a relationship that's not transactional. You want to build a relationship that's actually a relationship. The transactional thing is you going to Starbucks, getting a quick coffee, and then heading out your way. They got paid, you got your coffee, you got your latte, whatever. An actual relationship is built on reciprocity and built on connection and building things over time. And so massaging those relationships will actually help you through a dry spell. And we'll get into some other instances where this would make sense. But I'd say the first thing is that really working with those relationships. And if you are having a dry spell and you're reaching out to your Rolodex, as we used to call it, which for the young folks is that little, it's a little spin roller where you have before we had phones, at least the traditional, at least before the smartphones, we'd have to flip through there and we'd have all our contacts on this little roller. It's called a Rolodex. And one of the things when you go through your Rolodex to think about is what you can actually do for someone else. So I did outreach. I sent a message, said earlier this week, might have been earlier this week. And it was someone I hadn't talked to in a while. And I said, hey, how can I support? Because they had gotten a new role. And I was like, how can I support your new role? Did you need some help with this or with that? That's a different discussion than, hey, I heard you got a new role and I bet you have a budget. Why don't you give me some work? Those are two separate things. One is coming, again, from a place of service. The other part is coming from a place of, do me a solid. As they used to say, hook me up, right? You got me, right? Come on. Like, I got to pay rent. I got to pay mortgage. I got stuff to do. Can you go ahead and pay me? So give me some work. Those are two totally different vibes. When you're in a dry spell, as I talk about, again, in the original episode about the beginner's guide to freelance money, what you need to do is get the right mentality when you get in the game. So get in the right mentality and say, hey, whether I got a bunch of money just sitting there or I got a little bit of money sitting there, my main goal is to make sure that this editor, this publisher, this VC, venture capitalist, whatever, this promoter, if you're doing a speaking gig, whatever, I need to make their job easier. Their job isn't to do my job and to give me money. My job is to serve them in a way so that whatever they're paying me, they're absolutely getting their money's worth, if not a ton more than that. That, I think, is the number one thing when it comes to a dry spell, because we can get really desperate. Excuse me, you get really desperate when it comes to a dry spell. And you start making decisions, that aren't up for your ethics. And the key thing is that eventually that dry spell is going to be over. Either you end your business or you get the right clients coming in and suddenly you're back on top. Particularly if you're back on top later, you don't want the decisions that you made during a dry spell to haunt you. And there are 2-3 instances off the top of my head, I don't even have to think that hard, where it was a rough month. It was a rough year, whatever. And I got some offers. And if I took those offers, I would be going in a totally different direction, you know? Exactly, exactly. Thank you. And you'll be top of mind when those projects come up. And so it's not a matter of just saying, it's a matter of being short term versus long term. If you're short term, you're saying, I need to pay the bills right now. And I have some videos that talk about that again on the Bring Your Work show over at youtube.com/Brown Damon. I have some episodes that talk about that where people will say, I need money right now. And then there will be people that are saying, I'm going to plant the seed so I have money 5 years from now. And as one person said, the amount of length that you're talking about when it comes to money is often reflective of how wealthy you are, or at least how your wealthy mindset is. So if I'm like, I got to hustle today because I need money by the end of the day, versus me saying, I'm going to go ahead, build this TV show. I'm going to go ahead and take the long route when it comes to my books, including my recent career remix, and build these audiences. And so then when I'm gone, my kids will automatically have money coming in based on my intellectual property. That's like, and I'm not that old. At least I don't think I'm that old. I'm not that old. And so hopefully I got a long way until I'm out of here. But I'm already thinking about that. That ends up being the framework that you need to think about. So, yes, like there's absolutely money that I would love to have right now. But if I'm going for the long money, then that requires building relationships. That requires navigating these dry spells. That requires a few different things, right? And I think that's all part of the discussion. Um, I wanted to actually share a couple books too that might help you out a little bit on your journey. One is The Passive Writer by yours truly, as well as my colleague Jeanette Hurt. It came out a few years ago. Do I have it here? I do. Damon's on top of things today. The Passive Writer. It's super tiny, super small. I got a stack of them over because this is for my publishing imprint. Bring Your Worth. So I got a stack of them over in the closet that are waiting for you. You can learn more about it at thepassivewriter.com, or you can go ahead and just click the link below here. If you're on Amazon, you just click the link. We talk about how you can build passive income as a writer, which is one of the questions that's going to be coming up in a minute. But worth checking out. Again, super small, really quick read. And it's been useful based on all the feedback that I've gotten from other folks. Another one in the freelance vein, so we're talking about freelancing, is Six Figure Freelancing by Kelly K. James. Hope you're doing well over on the East Coast. Or actually, I think you're in the Midwest now, but hope you're doing well. But one of the cool things about this book, and I have a copy somewhere around here. It's a classic book. It's dog-eared and all that good stuff. One of the things she talks about is how to negotiate your contracts well. She is a former lawyer, and so the discussions about hourly rates and all that are just on a different level. Again, for the fellow journalists, fellow writers, I think it even applies to a lesser extent to ghostwriters, to people who are doing content marketing. Shout out to y'all. This applies to all those things. So it's not just limited to, I'm a freelance journalist trying to write for the New York Times. It's like, no, like if you're a writer, period. And I think a lot of the insights in there can apply to other lines of work as well. So just want to give, excuse me, just want to give a shout out to those folks that are doing cool work. Shout out to Jeanette as well as to Kelly. And yeah, definitely want to check that out. All right. So one of those best case scenario things, but it will absolutely happen to you if you're in the game long enough. How do I take advantage of a big check? The thing is that if you're getting independent money, you're eventually going to get a big check. If you're in the game long enough, you're going to get a big check. If you're used to getting two figures, then suddenly you get a 3-figure check and it changes your mindset. If you're used to getting 3 figures, a few $100s here or there, and then you have a client or opportunity that gives you like a G, gives you like a stack or 1,000, then that changes your mindset. If you suddenly get into the 5 figures, which I'm a 5-figure keynoter now, so I get 5 figures when I do regular public speaking. And when that shift happened a little while ago, it's like different. It's like, wow, I'm coming through to speak for an evening and I'm getting 5 figures. Wow, okay. There's it changes the framework of everything. That might be worth a whole different episode. So that's in fact that leads to a whole bunch of more questions. I look forward to indulging that. In fact, if you have those any questions about that, feel free to throw them in, and I'm happy to explore that today. But I will digress. I will digress unless y'all have more questions about it. And so when you get that big check, you have to be ready for it. Number one, again, like I talked about, taxes, taxes, taxes. But then number two, you want to make sure that your systems are good. Systems meaning what backup service do you use to save all your documents, whether it's a Dropbox or a Box or Microsoft Cloud, I forget what it's called, Google Cloud, Apple Cloud, those regular services. Who do you use for your website? As I mentioned before, I use strikingly.com. And so I have a referral somewhere around there. So feel free to click on that if you want to learn more about where I host my website. I've been super happy with them, love their customer service. I've been with them for several years. All those things cost money. And so when you get a big check, the first recommendation I would have, aside from doing taxes, is to make sure that your systems are good. Because you don't want to be in a situation where you go through that big check and then suddenly you realize you need to pay your web provider. Now, as far as the personal finances, saving money and all those other things, I'm not going to touch on that part. That really has to do, number one, I'm not an accountant. Number two, I got my own financial issues, so I'm not going to act like that. I totally understand money on that level. I am not a CPA. But as far as like how you want to handle it within your business structure, which is what I'm focused on, taxes, and after that, systems. Get your systems right. Then you can start to think about hiring an employee or a virtual assistant or upgrading all your stuff or getting fancy equipment, whatever your thing is, right? You can think about all that later. But if your basic systems aren't taken care of, then you're in trouble. It's kind of like having a car and you getting money or having money and you're not getting your oil change. So you put new rims on it, you can upgrade the car, you put a new sound system in it. But if you're not getting the Jiffy Lube or whatever done, this isn't a sponsorship. It's just their name came up in my mind. Meineke or whatever. If you're not getting that joint done regularly, then the car is not going to make it. And you don't want to be in the situation where the car is not making it and you don't actually have the residuals to keep it going as something as basic as an oil change. So that's my biggest recommendation when it comes to when you get a big check. Taxes, and then after that, make sure your systems are straight. Because if your systems aren't straight, you can't make more money. That's what I'm getting at. When your systems aren't good, you can't make more money. And I've been in a situation, some of y'all watching might have been in a situation too, where you're doing an independent hustle, you're just getting by, and then the stuff you need, whether it's your color printer or the money you need to take the train, which shout out to Chicago, which is where I started my businesses. I remember having a couple rough days there where I didn't have the money for the L train, but my client was downtown. I did not live downtown. My client was in the Loop. I'm like, how am I gonna, right? Obviously I figured it out because I'm here now. But I'm like, how can I get ID? Why do I need ID to get ID? Right? How can I get paid if I need money to get paid? Right? Don't be in that situation. We are fortunate to get big checks sometimes. And our perception, as I've been hinting at, our perception of what a big check is changes over time. And so what a big check is to me now is way different than it was even just a year ago. My vibe is just different. That's the way it's supposed to work. Whenever you're leveling up and you get one of those big checks, then definitely invest it. In short, I'm saying invest it in yourself. Because if you don't invest it in yourself, you're not going to be able to bring in more income later. And if I didn't invest in myself each step of the way, then I would not be talking to you now. I wouldn't have a book in print, wouldn't have the show, wouldn't have my TED Talks. Like none of this would have happened. You have to invest in yourself. If you're not doing that, then again, you're not going to be able to level up and you're not going to make it. Depends on if you want to be on a long haul or not. Excuse me. All right. So the last big question here, and the lines are open, so feel free to send in more. How do I create passive income? Passive income simply comes down to one basic idea. What do people keep asking you for? And what can you create based on the current resources you have that will perpetually take care of them? What are people asking for? And what can you create with the resources that you have currently that will perpetually, that means forever, take care of them? A book, my new book, Career Remix, is a simple example. I'll be sure and throw a link in there. But this just came out about a year ago. Happy anniversary to Career Remix. The last of a very long series of books that I did from The Bites as Entrepreneur many years ago. Bites as Entrepreneur came out when my second kid was born. He's going to turn 7 this year. So that gives you an idea of how many books I've been in between. And Career Remix is kind of the end of that saga at the moment. So Career Remix, get the gig you want based on skills you got. Shout out to Barnes & Noble, which partnered with me on it. All the other books are on my own imprint. Bring Your Worth that I do on my own. A book, though, is a simple example of a potential passive income stream. You put your knowledge, or you create something, you make it, you give it out to the public. They pay for it. As we speak, I have 26 books, and about half of them are giving regular residuals, or still giving residuals. The first half of the books, they've gone out of print, or whatever topic they're talking about. I've been an author for a while, so whatever topic was hot at the time, it's not hot anymore. Totally fine. That's how it works with passive income sometimes. But the last half of my catalog, mostly, again, over the past 6-7 years, they're still moving. And so as I'm speaking to you, and as I'm doing the show, and as I'm spending time with my wife, as I'm playing with my kids this afternoon or whatever, then those are still flying. But I had to do it one time and create it one time. That's my definition of passive income. I have a whole section about passive income in the original episode that spawned this Q&A. Be sure and check it out. Afterwards, it's about 25 minutes, and it talks about, again, these 3 pillars: how to get through a drought, how to deal with a windfall, a big check, and this last part, how to start passive income. One of the keys to passive income is to actually be able to own your stuff. And there's a great book that talks about this, and it is by Alan Weiss, and it's called Value-Based Fees. I've talked about this book numerous times. I was in a situation where I was leveling up, one of those moments where I did the proverbial 4 figures to 5 figures, and I needed to figure out how to negotiate. One of the things when it comes to independent money is that there are no guidelines per se. So you could get a contract, get a contract with a vendor. If you work with vendors, you could get a speaking engagement. You could even write an article or a book. And you might be in a situation where the publisher, the vendor, the promoter, whatever, says, all right, so how much do you charge? And you have to know, number one, how to respond to that. The second thing you need to know is what worth you're bringing, the value, shout out to Alan, the value that you're actually bringing to the client. This goes back to the dry spell question, where it's like, what value are you giving to the people that are hiring you? What value are you giving to the people that serve? If you're not giving that kind of value, then you can't quite negotiate as well. Because if you're like, hey, I'm about to get $10,000, let's go. I'm going to get $10,000 because I want $10,000. That's not it. That's not sustainable. That's selfish. Nothing wrong with being selfish. Just be clear of how you're showing up, right? Nothing wrong with being selfish. I got selfish stuff too. Just be clear that you are being selfish at that moment. Like, know how you're appearing. And then you're not giving them a reason to work with you again. I have a lot of repeat clients. And I know some of y'all are watching. So I know some of y'all, even some of the people that I've talked to, very few, if any, of the successful folks that I knew that are getting independent money, a lot of us do not go by advertising. We actually go by referral. In other words, other people will say, Damon is an excellent coach. You should go and look him up if you're feeling stuck. And then I get the random proverbial phone call. It's like, hey, I work with so and so, and they told me to look you up. You know, let's talk. And that's literally how I built my private coaching practice over the, again, last 6-7 years. You want to build those relationships, but you want to do it at the same time, right? Exactly. Outcome versus impact. Exactly. So you want to do it at the same time that you are actually getting your worth in that situation. The easy part about it, what makes it easy, is that if you know that you're doing great impact, as I mentioned here, great impact with that organization, with that person, with the people that you're serving, then you charging what you feel like you're worth should not be a hard negotiation, because you're sharing with them, this is what I'm bringing. Now, if they don't understand what you're bringing, then it might have to do with your marketing. It might have to do with how you're explaining it. It might just be an organization or an audience that isn't for you. You have to know the difference. But the one thing you have control over is knowing your own value and what value you're bringing to the people that you're serving. You have complete control over that, complete control. And if you have control over that, it's a lot easier to actually know your value. And Alan gets 500% into this. Again, when I was going through a transition, this is several years ago now, and it was one of the first major checks that I was negotiating. And I grabbed Alan's book, and whatever I charged them ended up being 2 to 3 times what I thought I was going to charge them before I read his book. And it ended up going beautifully. Obviously, I got the check, and it being a good relationship at that point. And it reminded me, or showed me, my power. It's really cool, really key to understand that. And also cool too. Another one I want to give a shout out to, Janae Miller. Hope you're doing wonderful over in South Jersey, Philly, where I'm originally from. And she has great independent books. She's been killing it, been a 6-figure freelancer for several years. Love her work. She has some independent books over there at Roadmap to Freelance Writing Success. There's 2 books. I believe she has a third one coming out. And I think it's going to be announced this. She announced it, but I don't think it's out quite yet. But this is the hub for that. Be sure and check it out. Again, the bent is towards freelance writing, but what she talks about, the times that we've talked, and I think I might have had her on a panel several years ago, or vice versa. And so we're of a similar mindset. The stuff I'm talking about, she goes deeper into that, again, as far as being an independent creator. And so if we go back to the original question, how do I create passive income? The work of Alan Weiss, again, with value-based fees, matters because part of the negotiation is you owning your shit. I don't know else how to put it. Owning your shit. We're talking about intellectual property. We're talking about you owning the stuff that you create. The books that I've made, Career Remix is a partnership with Barnes & Noble. Other than that, every single one of these books is through my own imprint, including some books behind my big head over there. These are through my independent imprint. So recently, I had taken my book, The Bites of the Entrepreneur, which y'all made a bestseller several years ago. Thank you again. I can't thank you enough. I kind of started this business journey. I took this, or I'm taking this, and I'm applying it to the Bring Your Worth show and turning that into an AI, artificial intelligence, animated audiobook that y'all have been previewing or checking out every single Monday. And in fact, I'll take a moment right now to go ahead and put the link in there, because I think it's worth discussing, because it's an excellent example, I believe, of us taking advantage of the intellectual properties that we own and building something based on it. There we go. And thanks again for your patience as I do do things with one hand over here. I am loving this Q&A format, so hopefully you guys are getting some good stuff out of it too. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to throw them into the comments. Here we go. Sorry for the long thing there, but The Bites as Entrepreneur by Damon Brown, official audiobook. Click on that link, and it will be the first half of the book. It's 21 chapters. This is the original one, 21 chapters. And the first half has already premiered. I'm premiering a new chapter every Monday. And each of these chapters are created using this, taking the audio from the audiobook, and then the visuals, which obviously is YouTube, so there's visuals. The visuals are actually created by me working with AI, creating visuals based on the things that I'm saying. It sounds trippy. It is. It is fun. I've loved it. And if you know any of my work or are familiar with some of my books, you know that I'm really into technology since I was a little kid. And so the merger of communication, technology, and how we connect with each other has always been my jam. Learning how to take AI and create something new out of a book that came out 7 years ago is just, it's a different spirit. I would not be able to do this if I didn't actually own the intellectual property of the Bite Size Entrepreneur. Like, it's mine, it's in my family name, Library of Congress, the whole nine. Because I own it, I can do whatever I want with it, including turning this, which is a book that came out 7 years ago. It was a bestseller when it first came out. I actually ended up re-upping it when I started publishing it again a few months ago. When I learned more about AI, I started using the visuals, and now a whole new audience, including perhaps yourself, are getting to know this bestseller from several years ago. If I did not have the intellectual property and the ability, the contracts, whatever terms you want to use, then I wouldn't be able to do this. Or I'd have to negotiate with a publisher or go through all this other stuff. Or worst case scenario, I wouldn't own the rights at all. I couldn't do anything. So I'd have this idea to use artificial intelligence to reboot my audiobook that came out 7 years ago to create more passive income and to create stuff for this new audience that I have with you. And then I'd be like, well, I can't do anything. So a key part about passive income is actually keeping an eye on those contracts and those commitments that you make. I did a episode that y'all seem to really appreciate. 3 reasons why you shouldn't sign a contract. This episode came out about a year ago. It's gotten really positive feedback. I sent it to a lot of my coaching clients because a lot of my folks that I work with, in fact, all of them, I believe at this point, are independent. And so if you're going to make, if you're going to make a commitment, if you're going to rock with a certain organization, if you're going to have a partnership, as I have with Barnes and Noble, we negotiated this partnership over the course of a couple months because there are certain things that they want to do that I was like, no. It's like, we can't do that and part of the negotiation, which I think is a key part of it, part of the negotiation is that I already have bestsellers through my own publishing imprint. So I'm already a publisher. So me working with Barnes and Noble, they had to offer something that I couldn't do on my own and vice versa. And what I was offering them, I was like, hey, I already built this audience. I'm already doing units on my own. Why don't we work together and we can do even more units and have a bigger impact in the world? If you're already creating your stuff and you're building stuff from scratch, as I say in my last book, Build From Now, if you're building from now, that empowers you. You're empowering yourself to create passive income streams because you can do whatever you want with those intellectual properties. A book is a simple example, but it could go across any type of creation that you're doing. Anyway, be sure and check out that episode after this to learn more about that. And then this is the big one. Start passive income now. It's an entire playlist. I believe it's 12 or 13 episodes. Let's say a baker's dozen of episodes that talks about this, including I believe it's an hour-long episode that talks about passive income in the playlist now. If it's not there, we'll be in there soon. Be sure and check it out if you want to go deeper into passive income. And I think that's all for the questions for today. I've been gabbing for 45 minutes nonstop, so I think I'm going to go and tap out unless y'all have more questions. Thank you so much for joining me for managing freelance money. Hope to have more of these Q&A episodes. So we'll see if it goes to the regular format next Wednesday or if we do this new format. We'll see what's up. If you do have questions that didn't get addressed, be sure and throw them into the comments. If you're on YouTube, it's at youtube.com/BrownDamon. The comment section's below. go ahead and throw it in there, whether it's the live chat or throw it into the chat, the comment section that's directly below my talking head. Same thing for LinkedIn and all the other platforms, as well as with Amazon, because I'm on there too. Let me know your questions. What do you want to get addressed next time? And for the upcoming episode this Friday, be sure and tune in. It's going to be an excerpt from my interview that I had on the On Boys podcast. It's called, at least the excerpt's called Give Kids a Compass. The On Boys podcast is done by Jenny Fink. Shout out to Jenny, as well as Janet Allison, who I just met on the show when she recorded us a few weeks ago. And I talk about what it's like to raise two little boys. Particularly, my wife is Hindi. And so to raise two Black and brown boys in the current environment, me being the primary caregiver, until recently, my wife's working more from home. So it's a little bit more of the shared thing. But for the first several years, it was just me kind of holding the fort down at home, what that experience is like, and even explaining to my in-laws as well as to my extended family what I actually do as an entrepreneur, which ties into my parenting style and the challenges with that. Oh, thank you. I'm so glad that it served y'all. But be sure and check out the episode. The episode, I believe, the episode is actually live now, so you can do the whole episode. If you click on the link right now, then it'll take you to the episode on the Bring Your Worst show, which is an excerpt. But right below the excerpt, which will be live in a couple of days on Friday, right below the excerpt is a link to the entire conversation, which is about 50 minutes. So thanks again to Jenny and for Janet to having me on and to talk proudly about my boys. Anyway, much love to y'all. Remember, you can always bring your worth and that you always build from now. Take care and be sure and throw some questions in there for next time if there's anything on your mind that we didn't address today. Be well.